So we have about 3 minutes left, and I just wanted to get to one subject before we have to close down here. We met at your home a few months ago down in Miami, and we spent an hour talking about the accounting rules around Bitcoin and how they negatively impact corporations by putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And that's something I had never even realized or heard of before. And I think most people don't know this either, but I think it would be worth our time to spend the last few minutes here to talk about that subject. And you run a public company, you've seen this firsthand. Can you explain to people what why it's so the balance sheet to put Bitcoin on it?
Yeah. So the idea, the problem is Bitcoin is currently deemed by GAAP accounting in the US as an indefinite intangible asset. And that means if you buy $1 billion of it, you're required every second of the day to shop for the lowest bidder. And on a Saturday night in Singapore, if someone wanted to pay you 30% less for that, you have to mark down the entire $1 billion by 30%. And so you take a $300 million write-off and becomes an operating loss in the quarter in question. Then you carry $700 million on your balance sheet forever. And if it goes up to be worth 10 billion, you're still showing 700 million in asset, and the 9.3, which is the additional market value, is not shown in a GAAP accounting statement. You won't see it ever reflected in the P&L. You won't see it reflected in the balance sheet, which means the company that has $10 billion of Bitcoin in the quarter where Bitcoin price doubles has exactly the same P&L results as a company with $1 of Bitcoin in the quarter where the price doubles. So there's no transparency to any investor. It's problematic. And of course, if you're a casual investor, you can't really understand the financial situation of the company without extensive pro forma schedules. So as a practical matter, a public company needs to create pro forma non-GAAP operating income schedules to relate the non-GAAP results to the EPS results. And then you need to provide people enough information for them to do their own calculation about how much asset you really have. There are other accounting treatments, other accounting systems where they wouldn't do it that way. They would treat it as a financial asset, and you would mark it to market. And so if you held Bitcoin in a fund, if I had a mutual fund and it was backed by Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin doubled and the fund doubled, I would actually mark it up and I would take investment income and I would actually mark it on my balance sheet, because fund accounting is different than commodity and Bitcoin accounting and property accounting. And if I was a foreign company with a different accounting standard than FASB, then I might very well carry this as a financial asset. So the summary there is, what that does is it advantages the individual, because the individuals don't concern themselves with GAAP, so they're advantaged. It advantages private companies because they're not concerned. It advantages institutional investors because they have a different accounting treatment. And it advantages foreign companies that have a different accounting treatment than the FASB GAAP treatment in the US. It disadvantages publicly traded US companies under FASB GAAP accounting. And it makes it challenging for Apple Computer to buy $25 billion worth of Bitcoin, because you would end up with the volatility of Bitcoin washing through your P&L, creating optical confusion. Then you have to pro forma it out. And so if you're a very conservative CFO, you would think, maybe I'm just going to keep this to 1%, 2%, 3% of my balance sheet. If your concern is just make the right economic decision, then you wouldn't make it based upon that indefinite intangible. You'd make it based upon, pro forma cash flow rational, right? So that's the issue. I think that the U.S. industry and the U.S. investors will benefit if that accounting gets reviewed at some point in the future.